How long have we got you for, Nod?
An hour and a half.
Is an hour all right? We're rolling now. You want to give us a little touch of level, Noddy, if that's
Hello, hello, am I coming through?
You're coming
loud
through.
And clear, loud and clear.
Fabulous. Noddy, what can I say? We've been really excited that you were coming in rather than down the line or over that Zoom thing. It's just lovely to see you face to face.
Well, I like coming to Liverpool, actually, and of course the missus wanted to do some Christmas shopping, and she likes shopping in Liverpool. You know, you got some good shops here. You got some good restaurants here, and also we thought we'd make a day of it, you know. So
if your missus is shopping now and that certain Christmas song comes on in the shop, what's her reaction?
Well, I don't think anybody will be saying, is that your husband there? But they do it to me. She don't get embarrassed by it, but I mean, I get shouted at probably every day of the year. Somebody shouts me catchphrase from the end of the song. But obviously in November, December, especially if it's getting up to Christmas, I'll get it 40, 50 times a day. And the funny thing is, I mean, I take it in good art, you know, it's what I'm known for now, I understand that. And everybody thinks it's the first time somebody's ever shouted it at me. I like it's 50 years old this year.
Well, it is, and that was one of the main reasons that we wanted to talk to you. And I'm really pleased you're here. I'm really pleased you're here because
in person, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a difficult few years. Health-wise. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm on a level playing field at the moment. They never tell you you're cured, which, you know, they never do with any cancers. I got diagnosed 5 years ago, and it's strange, really, because I didn't know about esophagus cancer at all. Apparently, it's not really been heard of. It's not got much profile.
Right.
That's why I've been out and about now doing TVs and radios and stuff to make people aware of it, because it's the 7th most common cancer in the country, particularly for men. Women get it as well, but particularly for men, particularly also over 50. And, of course, they give me 6 months to live because it was well advanced. I haven't had any major things that would let me know, except I was a bit anemic, and I thought that was just old age creeping on, and, you know, was a bit weak, you know, wasn't able to do things I'd done, but I thought, you know, you get to your 70s, you think that's going to happen anyway. And they took me in, and they said, well, you know, you got 6 months to live. And
how do you react, though, to something like that?
Well, you get scared, but with me, I have a very good outlook on life. I always have, even as a kid. I live life day to day, and I thought, and I was more worried for me missus and me kids and me grandkids than I was for me, you know, wondering how it was going to affect them. And with me, I do live life day to day, and I thought, well, I've had a great life. I've done a lot of good stuff in my life. I've had a lot of fun. If the end is in sight in 6 months, I'll see it through.
Did you resign yourself to that?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah, absolutely. Resign myself to it totally.
Does it focus you, though, on what's really important in life?
Well, I've always been, ever since I come off the road, I've been very focused on spending more time with my family. I've always been focused. Like, I left the band in the mid-90s.
92, I think.
Yeah, 92, around there. And from then on, one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons I left the band was because I wanted to spend more time with my family. I hadn't seen my 2 elder daughters, who are both in their 40s now. I hadn't seen them growing up hardly. You know, I hadn't been to the nativity play or seeing their school
Yeah, but you were out earning a living.
I was out doing my thing.
To give them
absolutely.
a good life.
Absolutely, that's true. And they understand that. But there's no sort of, you do realise you don't get that time back. And then when I got divorced at the end of the 80s, and my dad died at the end of the 80s, I thought, I've got to prioritise here. I'd been with the band 25 years. I'd been on the road for 30 years because I was in bands before Slade. And I thought, I've got to prioritise, see my dad more than my dad, before he passed on. And, I met Susan, who's now my wife. Started a new relationship. I saw more of my kids. My kids weren't that old then. When I first left the band, and then we got married, and of course we had Django. Me and Susan had Django in the mid-90s, in 95.
Django Reinhardt, named after.
He was named after Django Reinhardt, the jazz guitarist. Yeah, he was. And I always thought if I had a boy, I've always wanted to call him Django. And I thought it was a great name. And he loves it. He loves the name. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go out on the road again and do things that are going to take me away from home more than 2 or 3 weeks at a time, because I wanted to see him growing up, what I'd missed first time around. I wanted to see him growing up, and that's how I've led my life, really. I mean, I still worked a lot, but I didn't go out on the road or tour or be away from home for a long time like I used to in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, it's a very personal thing, you know, to you when you got ill. And it's only recently that you've told everybody about it. So the process of treatment as well.
Yeah.
How hard did that hit you? Did you lose your hair? I know you
I lost my hair, yeah.
About
it was a very, very strong bout. They told me at the Christie Hospital in Manchester, a big cancer hospital there, and my consultant there, Professor Mansour, he saw me and I said, well, I've got 6 months, I'm facing up to it. And he said, well, there is one alternative we can try on you. We've got this treatment that we have had some success with. He said it's very high-powered treatment. We never usually give it anybody over 60. He said, but with your mental attitude, which I think was very important to him, he says, with your mental attitude, can we try it out? You know, it's a trial. You know, we're still trialing it. He said, but it has worked on much younger people. And he says, will you be part of the trial? And I said, yeah, I'll go for it. What alternative had I got, quite frankly? And he says, right, I will give it a trial. And it was a very, very strong, very, very strong. And that went on for a few weeks. And then, of course, your resistance is low when you finish the treatment. And then you've got to get back to some sort of health.
Was this during COVID as well?
Well, it was coming up to COVID. COVID made it even more dangerous than if I'd have caught COVID or anything. When I was recovering, it would have been back to square one.
So your hair was on its way.
My hair was gone.
You were wearing a mask.
I was wearing a mask, so people didn't.
I was going to say,
recognise
there's
me.
no chance of anybody shouting it's Christmas to you.
No,
in the street
they didn't.
Then.
That's
that
true.
might have been a nice little kind of break from it, though, I suppose. In a funny kind of way.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Every cloud.
So, it was a bit of that. And, I was spotted occasionally at the hospital, when I was going in for my checkups and I still have to have scans regularly. And but I was spotted a few times, but I just blanked it. I didn't put it out in the press or anything. I didn't want media attention on it at all.
No.
I wanted to cope with it in my own way. I didn't want the family to get media attention because that would have made it much worse for them too. The only people we let know outside of the family circle were very, very close friends that I knew I could trust and not, spread it about. And so we managed pretty much to keep it quiet for nearly 5 years until we put it out ourselves. It was only when I let it out, which I intended to do earlier this year. I did a tour with a 10-piece jazz boogie woogie band, the Tom Seals band, who are absolutely fabulous band. And I was doing some shows on their tour, 2-hour shows with them on their tour, just guesting on a few nights. And at the end of the show, nobody was expecting me to sing.
What was the reaction like? I bet you.
They took the roof off.
Yeah,
it seriously took the roof off. And but of course, I had to explain to the audience why I'd been, hidden for 5 years, as it were. And I told them the story. Only the rough précis of the story. And of course, got a big round of applause.
What did that feel like?
That I was still standing up.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're pleased you're still here. You're still standing, and long may it continue. You've become part of everybody's Christmas, really, for 50 years. This is 1973. I can't remember a Christmas without you. The song, the band, if you like, because of the reruns and everything else. I bought the songs when I was a kid too. A funny story about taking one of the singles into school and being told off because of the spelling mistakes. Yeah, that one.
Well, the BBC, at that time, on our funny spellings in the early 70s, they did a documentary. Radio 4 did a big documentary, about four-part series, about phonetic spelling, which ours was really, although we got it from the toilet walls in the Black Country where we're from, but it became phonetic spelling. And the schools started to use it because it was an easier way for kids who couldn't, got learning difficulties.
Phonics, Phonics.
to learn to spell. And so in a funny twist, it had like that. But then when we got, of course, to the 80s, and people like Prince and that were doing your hip-hop spelling and all that.
Yeah.
It was what we
were in there first.
And tech speak.
You were in there
We'd
first.
been doing it years before.
Yeah, exactly. What was it like for you at home as a child at Christmas time? We
had a great family. I was an only child, but my mum had fostered kids all through my life. So we always had a family Christmas. And it was always the same pattern. I mean, I do it today. We have pretty much the same pattern today. I call it Groundhog Day.
Really?
Because we do pretty much the same thing. I mean, today, if we're not going out to Christmas lunch, and usually I cook the Christmas lunch if we're staying at home, but I cook it. I do all the cooking at home anyway, but I particularly show off with Christmas lunch, and all the family love my Christmas lunches. And if we're not going out, we stay in our pyjamas all day, the whole family.
You and millions of others, I'm sure.
I stay in our pyjamas. So we do what every other family does. We watch the telly, we have a bit of a sing-song round my guitar and stuff like that. But it all based around the Christmas dinner. And, of course, me at my age, I've had the Christmas dinner and I'll pass out in the armchair for the next couple of hours. But that's the way it is, when you get older. But in my youth, when I was a youngster, we did pretty much the same. We used to get up Christmas morning, and of course I'm going back now to the 40s and 50s, and when I was young, and we didn't have what kids have today, presents. We had a stocking. I mean, it was a stocking with an orange in. We'd usually have an annual, so it'd be the Beano or the Dandy or one of them. We might have one of them mesh bags with chocolate coins in, covered in gold paper, like.
Yeah. And
that was about it. We might get a book or something like that, but we didn't get any big presents at all. Nothing. Well, we couldn't afford it. My family. My dad was a window cleaner.
That's right.
My mum worked in a school canteen. I mean, we didn't. We didn't get any big presents for the first God knows how many years. And we were like, we'd come in. I was a war baby. I was a baby boomer, born in 46. So we were still getting over the war. I mean, I never saw a banana till 1954.
Have you had a banana for Christmas since?
I've had a banana since, yeah.
So I explained to Mike, I mean, I grew up in the 70s.
Okay.
So I explained to my kids now who were moaning because, when are you putting the heating on? When are you putting the heating on? And I always end up saying, listen, when I was a kid, the ice was on the inside of the window. And they say, you're making it up, Dad, you're making it up.
You're right.
And you're going to confirm.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. We never had central heating. Even my mum, up until she died in 2002, her house was never central heated. She would never have it put in. She thought it was
bad for your chest.
Correct.
That's it. My mum's the same.
And she suffered with her chest, so she would not have central heating. She absolutely would not have it. But on Christmas Day, in them days, no matter how not well off you are, you had 3 meals every day, pretty much, one way or another. It wasn't an expensive meal, but you had 3. So on Christmas morning, we generally have bacon and egg sort of thing, which my mum would be cooking for hours. They cook for hours. So you'd open your stocking and you get your stuff out and whatever surprise they'd bought you and whatever. You'd go down for your breakfast. I mean, we was, like you say, the house I had up until I was 7 years old. I mean, it was a coal fire and you had to boil your kettle, have a bath on the water off that, once a week. And that was what the house was like. It was damp.
We survived.
The house was damp, it was, and that's the way it was. But you got used to it. You were used to living
everybody
like that.
was the same.
Everybody was the same.
You kind of didn't know any different.
Correct, absolutely. And then you'd have your Christmas dinner at about or it always had to be before the Queen's speech, whatever time that come on.
3 o'clock, I think, yeah.
So we'd have to be finished and cleared away by 3 o'clock for the Queen's speech. My dad would obviously go down the pub before Christmas dinner, and he'd come back a bit tiddly.
Yeah.
And then at tea time, what you did in them days as well, we generally got to one of my grands, where either my dad's family were, my uncles and aunts, would be with their kids, or my mum's, and we'd go to their house for tea. You'd have tea.
That was it.
And you'd have, because it was Christmas Day, you might have a salmon sandwich or an ham sandwich, so that was luxury, absolute luxury.
That was it.
Yeah, and a jelly. You always had jelly and ice cream as well.
Yeah, you mentioned before about your dad being a window cleaner. Did I get this right? Did you use his van once to drop Robert Plant off at a gig?
Always used him. When my band at the time wasn't working, this is pre-Slade, pre-In-Betweens as we were originally.
That's right.
But pre that, I was in another band, and when we went and got gigs, Planty's band, they were originally called the Tennessee Teens, then they became a
Planty's band.
Yeah. Then they were called Listen, and if they hadn't got, they never got any transport, they never got any gear half the time.
Yeah.
So I used to loan them gear, and I used to drive them around in my dad's van to gigs, and I used to set the stuff up for him and that, because Planty, even in them days, he was a poser. I mean, you wouldn't see him setting the equipment up now.
Some things never change. Some things never change.
But I mean, we used to get on great together. Yeah. And it was weird. I think we got to 1973, 74 maybe, when Zeppelin did a 4 to 5 night run at somewhere like Earl's Court or somewhere like that. Mm. And we went one night. He asked me to go down one night and watch him, and see him. And I mean, it was a great show. They were huge in America at the time. And he announced from the stage, I think it was Kathmandu, or what's that record they had? It's like an Indian Moroccan riff. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, this is for me roadie. He's sitting up in a box up there, the ex-roadie, Noddy Holder."
Well, you've been a roadie for Elton John.
I have.
You have been a roadie for Elton John.
Yeah.
And in cartoon form, if you like, because you were a roadie called Banger.
I was.
In Bob the Builder. Can I play the clip?
You can.
All right, let me play the clip.
Whoa! Whoops! No damage. Built to be dropped, this stuff. It's a tough life, rock and roll.
Who's that? That's Banger. He's our roadie.
Rock on!
That was Bob's special Christmas, or Bob the Builder Christmas episode.
Yeah, and it was the first film they ever brought out as well. I mean, it's weird, really, because at the time that was out, and since people still buy it now, but at the time it was out, little kids, like I'm talking under 8 years old.
Well, it's 20 years old that now.
Is it really?
Yeah,
oh, my
20
word.
years old, yeah.
But little kids, they used to come up to me, and they didn't know anything about Slade particularly, but they knew me as Banger.
Alison Steadman was in it.
Alison Steadman was the lady mayoress, and she got the hots for me. She wanted a bit of rough, so she sort of fell in love with me.
These Crosby girls.
Yeah. So that was, it was a great experience to be in that. Because people forget how huge Bob the Builder was.
Christmas number one.
It was, certainly.
Yeah.
And it was massive TV viewing as well for kids. And it was great because I went in the studio to do it with the cast, with Neil Morrissey as Banger, as Bob. And the rest of them. And we had such a laugh.
Alison Steadman played the mayoress. Her name was Bunty.
That's it, Bunty.
And I think at one stage you went, "Come here, I'll catch you, Bunty, love." Something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when will the Christmas tree be arriving, Bob?
Oh,
no! Oh, goodness me.
Don't panic! I've got you, Bunty!
One of the main reasons that we wanted to talk to you today was 50 years ago. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Aye.
And the similarities between 1973 and 2023, politically, cost of living crisis, oil crisis, trouble in the Middle East. I'm going to play a little clip of Harold Wilson, if that's all right.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about we'll talk some more in a second.
We must break the cycle of inflationary claims and counterclaims. This can be done only if the average family can be convinced that decisive action has been taken to restrict the incessant increases in the cost of the main items entering into the household budget. The present system introduced by the government of relating prices to gross retail percentage margins is a recipe for inflation at a time when production and wholesale costs are rising both through world prices and through inflation generated within this country. 3, rents and mortgage interest rates must come under strict control.
See you nodding there, Nod,
Yep.
when Harold Wilson was talking about that.
Well, you wouldn't believe it's 50 years ago and the same thing's happening now.
It's uncanny, isn't it?
It's a parallel.
It's uncanny.
It's a parallel universe. It wasn't just the oil crisis. I mean, I remember cars because I was on the road and touring a lot. And cars had to, the speed limit was 50 mile an hour to save petrol.
Yeah.
And of course, it affected all other things. The power was going off. Over Christmas time, when our record was out, the electric was going off at 10 o'clock at night because there were coal strikes which couldn't provide the electric. So you'd had no telly after 10 o'clock. The grave diggers were on strike. Firemen were on strike. They brought the army out to cope with fires. It's pretty much a parallel to what's going on now. War in the Middle East. It's just the same.
When I was 8 years of age at the time, and when you're 8, you don't pick up on it on this. When you're an adult, you do.
Yeah,
but when
course.
you're 8, you don't.
Yeah.
And it's only when you become an adult that you realise that you were shielded from this very, very difficult situation.
That's true.
But I think, and I'm not just saying it because you're here, I think bands like Slade and Wizard and Bay City Rollers and all of that stuff at the time kind of lifted the
spirit.
the national mood.
Yep.
Did
And
it
I
feel
think
like? Did it feel like that at the time?
It did feel like that because you see, I'm a big sort of history waller. My favourite period is the 20s, with the uprising of what was going on in Germany and stuff. But you have to remember at that time as well, showbiz played a big part of people's lives. You know, you'd got the Charleston, you got the Flapper Girls, you got all that going on. You got the silent movies. That period was lifting people's spirits in the times of the Depression. And I think the same thing happened in the early 70s. You had glam rock, which on a Thursday night, you put the telly on, top of the props, everything was colourful and sparkly. Behind the scenes, if you saw the scenery at top of the pops, you probably wouldn't think so. But of course, as it come over on television, everybody loved it. And on a Thursday night, it's not like today when a certain programme gets this, that or t'other. In those days, the whole family sat and watched that show, either having the tea in front of the telly or whatever.
Dads for pants people.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And 18 million viewers was the average. So if you made a good impression on Top of the Pops, you got a hit record. And it was so important to music at that time. But it did raise people's spirits, and particularly at Christmas, especially with our Christmas record. I mean, the big line at the end of the chorus is, look to the future now, it's only just begun. I mean, we have looked to the future since, but it's still beginning. It's still gone backwards.
It's almost like 10 paces forwards and 2 back.
Absolutely.
You recorded that song was it the Hit Factory in New York? You recorded that song. And in a blazing summer in September.
Yeah.
Quite hard to believe that, because the feel of it is,
oh,
it's cold, it's Christmassy, it's icy.
And we didn't do anything in the studio to make it Christmassy at all.
So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun.
It was the hardest song we ever had to record.
Why?
Because Don, our drummer, had a car crash just 2 months before, and his girlfriend had been killed in the car crash, and he was in a coma for a week. And when it happened, they didn't give him 24 hours to live, and he survived. And 6 weeks later, the doctor said, if you don't get him behind the kit now, you'll never know whether he can ever play the drums again.
Did he have to relearn?
He had to relearn. We could not record Merry Christmas Everybody from start to finish. It's nearly 4 minutes long. He could not remember that. So we had to put it like a jigsaw puzzle. We had to get him to play a little bit of beat, and then we'd get him to do another little beat, and ram it together. Then we'd have to overdub the bits like usually before the accident, we'd all have to go in the studio, play as we played live, do a few overdubs, and that was the record. You know, we'd got it done in, the Lord knows, you know, we'd finished the whole thing in 2 or 3 hours, and then it just got to be mixed, and it was in the shops pretty much the next day. Because he couldn't even remember the hits, let alone a brand new song. So it was a bit of a, you know, it was a long, drawn-out process to get it down. And we didn't think we'd got it down properly. We really didn't think, oh, well, this can't work doing it like this. Because we never were used to doing jigsaws, you know, bit of this here, bit of that there, and trying to, you know, mismatch it and whatever. It's getting the sounds to match and all sorts. Because, you know, if you're doing bits at a time, he's not hitting the drums at exactly the same power all the time.
Yeah.
And we went, you know, we went on the road to do some live dates, which there again, he couldn't remember the date, so you know, the songs on the date. So while I'm talking to the audience, Jim would be whispering in his ear. It starts like this. He'd whisper the intro in his ear. Then once he got that, he could get through the rest of the song. But that also went on for years. We had to do that on live shows.
So nobody knew about this then?
Nobody knew. No, nobody knew. Everybody knew he'd got no memory and no taste or smell, but they didn't know how bad he was. And anyway, while we were out in the States, we were doing these shows in the States to warm him back up. Because we couldn't have done it in Europe because it was so huge in Europe. We couldn't have possibly got away with it. But in America, we're doing some smaller shows, so we got away with it. And anyway, we thought, well, what they're going to do with this record, you know. And we left it to Chaz and the engineer in New York.
This is Chaz Chandler,
Chaz Chandler, our producer and manager. And he was there mixing it with the engineer. And the engineer was a clever cookie. And he got it all done. And we got back to New York after doing some shows touring round, and we played it to us. And he couldn't tell, you know, it sounded great. And we hadn't told the record company that we were doing a Christmas song. They'd been on to us for years because we'd already had 5 number ones at this point. We'd had Lord knows how many top 3s, and they kept pushing us. You got to bring out a record at Christmas time. You got not a Christmas record they didn't want. They just wanted a release at Christmas time, and we hadn't told them we'd got one in the can. And Chaz said, "We'll have one ready for you for this Christmas. We'll have a song ready for you, a record ready for you." So while we were carried on touring in the States, Chaz took the tapes back to London to play to the record company to say, "This is what we're giving you for Christmas." Like, and of course, when they heard it, they flipped.
Didn't like it?
No, they loved it.
Oh, they loved it?
Oh, God, they loved it. They said, "This is going to be a monster." And now we weren't sure. We weren't absolutely sure.
What were you not sure about?
We weren't sure which was the right thing to be doing, bringing out a Christmas song. Lennon had done it the year before. That's the only reason we thought it was a bit kosher to do. Jim's mother-in-law had challenged him, "Oh, you'll never be able to write a song like White Christmas or something."
So this is Jim Lee. This is your partner.
Jim Lee.
He wrote this with you, didn't he?
He did. And he wrote all this. We wrote all, pretty much all the songs together. And his mother-in-law had challenged him, "Oh, you'll never be able to do a White Christmas." And Jim thought, "Oh, you're just being silly, you know." And he'd never even give it the time of day, Jim. Then he thought, "Well, I'm going to show off to her. I'm going to prove that we can." And he remembered a song that I'd written way back in 1967, which was the first song I'd ever written. And it was a song in the hippy-dippy psychedelic days. And it was called "Buy Me a Rocking Chair." And it went, "So won't you buy me a rocking chair to watch the world go by? Buy me a looking glass to look me in the eye." And he remembered that. And he said, "I remember that chorus and that song you had way back then." And it had been thrown in the bin at the time because all the band said, "Rubbish." And in the bin it went. Which was always like, that's how the band worked, you know. It had to be a majority decision.
You're all honest with each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And Jim says, I've got a new verse melody to that chorus. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I want to show me mother-in-law it can be a Christmas song." So I went away on the night and went to the local pub in Wolverhampton. and went back to my mum and dad's after. And I sat up all night with a bottle of whiskey and wrote the total lyrics that night in one fell swoop, and went back over to Jim's the next day and played it to him, and he says, well, I like it. He says, let's go and play it to Chaz. He says, because Chaz, you know, hadn't even played it the band at this point, because if Chaz said no, didn't like it, it was, you know...
Because Chaz had a track record, Animals and all of that stuff.
Oh, Chaz was in the Animals, and he discovered and produced Jimi Hendrix.
Exactly. So
he had a track record.
He had a track record.
And he could spot a hit. Our first #1 record, Because I Love You, he spotted it. We'd written it in 20 minutes, me and Jim. We didn't think he'd got a chance of being a hit, but we took it to him, played it to him on an acoustic guitar, Jim on the violin, me singing, played it to Chaz. He says, I don't even think you've written your first hit. I think you've written your first #1 record.
He was
and
right.
we went, oh, God, Chaz, it's not a #1 record, this. But we went in, recorded it, we put it down in about an hour. It didn't sound like Slade, I have to say. Not that the hit we'd had before, Get Down and Get With It, which was very raucous.
It was completely different,
yeah,
wasn't it, really?
Boot stamping, hand clapping.
Yeah.
And we thought, how do we Sladify this? We put boot stamping and hand clapping on it, which we did, and immediately came to life as a Slade song then. And he was right, it went to #1 in 2 weeks.
Don't you change the things you do. No, no, no. La, 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 la,
And we couldn't believe it. We'd written a #1 record, which gave us hell of confidence.
What did that feel like?
Great, absolutely great. I mean, we were over the moon. I remember the first time it came on radio. We'd been warned it was coming on radio. And I think we were on the motorway in the van, and we pulled the van aside because we knew about what time it was coming on. So we pulled on the hard shoulder on the old M1 as was in them days.
Yeah.
And put it on and turned it up, and it come on. And I mean, it sounded great on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, we'd only ever heard it in the studio. But it was a great radio record as well. We thought, my God, this is good.
They were mixed for little speakers.
They were mixed for little speakers, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we used to mix in the studio. We have these tiny speakers in the studio. We would like to hear a big, full pelt in
Yeah,
the
but
big
nobody
ones.
had them at home.
Nobody had them at home. So we had little ones to try the radio sound on. And we always mixed for radio as well. And it sounded great, and then it started our career. I mean, the snowball then that went on, we were just churning them out.
Yeah.
And it was great.
So did you know at the time that Roy Wood and Wizard had a Wish It Could Be Christmas every day?
No.
Because it was almost like a Blair Oasis race to #1 with the song, wasn't it? It was a parallel.
And we were big mates with Woody and Wizard. Well, I mean, we knew them really well. We'd done Top of the Pops together. I'd known Woody since the early 60s.
Well, he smashed you in the face with a custard pie on Top of the Pops, I think, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
But I knew him in his original band he was in, called Mike Sheridan and the Night Riders. And then, of course, he went to The Move and was the main songwriter in The Move. And then, of course, that moved on then to ELO with Jeff Lynne.
Exactly.
So we knew him through all his career. We knew Jeff as well. You know, they were all Birmingham musos, so we knew them all because we did the same gigs as one another. And there was a big flux of great bands in the Midlands and great musicians. You know, there was the Moody Blues, there was a Spencer Davis group. There was so many great bands in the Midlands, and we all sort of knew one another. And, of course, we'd been in America, as I say, for the bulk of 73 on and off, and touring the world in 73. So we didn't know what Woody was up to. We knew he'd had out See My Baby Jive in June, which was, I think, it was just such a great record.
Well, he was on the Christmas Top of the Pops doing that.
I think he probably was.
He was, yeah.
And it was like a #1 record. So we knew he'd had that because we'd heard that in America. And anyway, we didn't know what he'd been up to and that he was thinking of bringing a Christmas record out. But he'd obviously had the same idea as us from how Lennon had done it the year before, made it cool, as it were. And of course, Elton John was doing the same thing, which we didn't know either.
Step Into Christmas.
Step Into Christmas. So there was 3 Christmas records out that Christmas. We all got released in the first week of December. But the thing was with ours, we had such a huge following. We'd already had 5 #1s. plus all the other hits we'd had. So we have this massive live following. We have this massive record buying following. And when the record company heard it, they said, we're going to put everything behind this record. We're going to have it pressed. Because the pressing plants were chock-a-block. They had to press up in Germany, France. We even were pressing up in LA because they couldn't cope with the demand. And we knew we were on a good run because even before the day of release, we had 500,000 pre-orders.
Wow.
Which pretty much guaranteed us a number one in those days, and a straight in at number one. We'd already that year, 73, we'd had Come On Feel the Noise straight in at one, Squeeze Me Please Me straight in at one. Then Don had his accident, of course. And then the record company was pretty sure we could get in at number one again, 3 in 1 year. Nobody had ever done that, including the Beatles or anybody. And at that point in time. And they said, well, the pre-sales are it's going to take it to number one. And he did, went to number one first day release, which Woody wasn't happy about.
Did he get to 2?
Now he got to 4.
To 4?
In the end. Yeah.
I must have been blazing.
He was blazing because it's a great record.
It is.
And anyway, that's why he threw a custard pie in my
Is that what
face.
it was? Yeah.
Are you hanging up the stocking on your wall?
But then the first day after it went to number one, the first day of you got your pre-orders, and then the first day of reordering around the country in the shops, we did 300,000 in one day, reorders. We couldn't, it was unheard of. Record company was going
Crazy.
over the moon.
I bet they were.
They were making serious dough from us, and it was incredible, really. And then it just sold and sold. And in the 2 or 3 weeks up to Christmas, we did 1 million.
Well, that's what you got when you were a kid. You got a record voucher for a present.
Yeah.
When you were a kid.
Yeah. And don't forget, people at Christmas, people buy records that don't buy the rest of the year.
Correct.
So we had all age groups. It
Yeah.
wasn't just Slade fans buying Merry Christmas, everybody. You had grannies buying it and, for their grandkids and all. You have a mass market at Christmas. That's why the charts become so weird over Christmas time.
Is it true, Noddy, that to this day you go on Christmas morning, you're the first up, and you go and shout "It's Christmas" at your missus?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Right down her ear.
I bet she loves that.
She said, no, and she always goes, not again.
Not again. It's not here again, is it? Not here again. Yeah, that's nice.
But I always catch her out, yeah. It's
you?
like a thing, yeah. And I do dress up as Santa. I've got my old, stage Santa outfit that I used
Have you still got that?
drag it out every Christmas, yeah.
What happened to the big mirrored top hat?
The mirrored top hat is in a bank vault. It's a bit knocked about now because it went on many world tours, but I would never get rid of it. And I locked it in a bank vault because I did loan it out once to a museum for a glam rock exhibition thing.
Yeah.
And it come back damaged, so I never loan it out anymore. And it's in a bank vault in New York.
Still fit?
Well, I haven't tried it on for a long time, but I know it's safe there.
It's
Unless the bank
definitely
burns
safe.
down or
It's
whatever.
definitely safe.
But, as far as I know, it would fit. My head's probably shrunk now. Yeah. And I haven't got the big bushy hair that I had
No,
in them
it'd probably
days.
come down over your
it'd
ears,
probably
wouldn't it?
come down, drop down over my ears.
Who's done the who's done a version of Merry Christmas,
Oh, a
Everybody?
lot, a lot.
That you think that's nailed it. That's a great version.
Oh, Lordy.
I mean, it's everybody, not everybody, but there's been a lot of people.
There has
who've
been
done
a
it.
lot. I don't think there's been any that I think are off the wall, know. I know this. The good thing that's good for us, particularly me and Jimmy as writers, is it gets covered and it gets used so much in adverts. Not only our version, but this year, am I allowed to say on the Bieber?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But there's a TV ad out at the moment, and it's even being shown now.
Yeah.
And it's for the shop Very.
Yeah.
And they're using it, but they're using the Girls Aloud version.
Right. Okay.
Which is a good version.
But you wrote it.
We wrote it.
So you'll get the
So we get
royalties for
yeah,
that.
Yeah. And I think Steps have done it. And
Yeah.
loads of people play it on their tour. Spice Girls did it on their tour.
Yeah.
And so every time it's played by another act or, it's recorded by another act, we get paid. Max Bygraves did it way back in the 70s.
Are you telling me that's the best version?
No, I'm not telling you that. But it made a few bob for us.
But that's
Maxis,
the thing.
them albums, his Sing-Along a Maxi,
Well,
used to sell a lot
they
of
did.
records.
That was the thing.
James Last did it in Germany.
Yeah.
He was a huge selling artist in Europe, James Last Orchestra. He did several of our songs.
So you hear a lot of artists who have to fight for royalties and the correct royalties. Has that ever been an issue with
Yeah, of
with
course,
you?
in the very early days, of course. Yeah, absolutely. But with the advent of computerisation and things now, PRS and PPL, they keep pretty much a check around the world as much as can be. Streaming. You earn nothing off streaming at the moment.
Even you?
Even us.
Really?
You get a fraction of a penny every time.
So
it's
this
streamed.
song that's 50 years old, that's on pretty much everything everywhere at the moment, on every
If it's
Christmas
streamed,
compilation, if it's streamed, you get...
Not a big earner. You earn, of course you earn, but you only earn a tiny amount. I mean, with us, like I think Merry Christmas has had something currently like 122 million streams. So of course, if you could pay a fraction on every play, you've earned a few bob off it, you know. But of course, your normal act,
You're not getting anything.
You're making nothing. These days, back in the 70s, you sold tons of records, tons. If you got number one or a big seller, you could sell millions of records around the world. And you went on tour to promote the record. These days, you sell records or you sell streams. You don't earn a lot from the records, so you go on tour to make the money these days.
The money's in the touring.
Totally the other way around.
Right, so you earn your living in the touring now.
Touring, merchandising, all that. Totally turned around now from what it was in back in then.
So you could never have envisaged that night that you sat up all night with a bottle of whiskey, writing Merry Christmas, everybody, that you would be at this point now,
No way.
50 years on.
No way.
I mean, you couldn't, could you?
No
Really?
way. No.
Does
no
that
way.
surprise you sometimes?
I mean, records didn't last that long. Pop music didn't last that long.
It was
then.
disposable, wasn't it?
Yeah, easily disposable.
It's different with the Christmas stuff. If you get the right Christmas
If you get the right one. But that's only in retrospect.
Yeah.
It didn't always happen, not since the crooner days. Pop, Christmas hits didn't really last forever. But I think ours was probably the first one that sustained it for everybody that did carry on. Because everybody started to do them then
exactly.
year on year
Because
out.
it wasn't always a thing, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't a
always
thing. No.
There's been parodies as well. What about Vic and Bob and Slade in Residence? Tell me about
Vic
that.
and Bob, we used to love Vic and Bob.
And Paul Whitehouse as well,
Yes,
I think. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul Whitehouse was Jimmy in
That's right.
Slade,
Yeah.
in Residence. And
Slade in Residence.
and then we went Slade Go Camping was the next series.
That's right.
I mean, I knew Vic and Bob anyway because I'd done Shooting Stars with them and stuff like that. I'd done the pilot of Shooting Stars with them and I'd done a couple of the episodes. And I done some of their tour dates when they took it on the road. So we did get on and they were big Slade fans. I mean, you can tell by watching the spoof on us that they were big Slade fans. It was cracking. The thing was, when that come out, of course, Cup of Soup was a big thing in the thing in the show. Yeah. And everybody, whenever people used to see me in a supermarket, they'd follow me around and see if I was buying Cup of Soup.
Yeah.
It was really funny. And I don't know whether Dave found it so funny. I don't think Dave got it originally at all, but I think he's learned to love it now.
It's an endearment. It was an endearment, wasn't it?
And of course, it happens in a band's career, particularly a band like us. We were a much loved band, even though some people don't really recognise it because they just remember Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
But like when something happens like that, the youth who watch that show start to look at your catalogue.
Yeah.
When Oasis did covers of Come On Feel the Noise and that, they start to look at your back catalogue, their audience. And it's weird, the things that have happened in our career to G up our back catalogue. It's a strange
and it's instant
thing.
now. You can get anything instantly.
Anything, anywhere, yeah.
And in a way...
But you couldn't then,
No, you couldn't
forget.
then.
Yeah.
No, you're right. So at the time, when everything's going well, and then as time moves on, record sales start to go down a little bit,
Yep.
and then, it's peaked and it's on its way down.
As happens with everybody.
But then, was it Reading that
Yeah.
came along? Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it somebody couldn't do a gig and you stepped in and you just had the
Ozzy
whole... Ozzy Osbourne couldn't do it.
Ozzy's new band wasn't ready. Of course, Ozzy was a big pal of ours. We grew up with him in the Midlands.
And you stepped in.
And we knew Sabbath really well.
So at this point, when you stepped in, where were the band? Were you
Pretty
doldrums?
much broken up. Dave had pretty much left. Dave had.
Yeah.
Only a couple of 3 months before, he pretty much finished because we weren't selling records. He got tired of it, as we all had. We'd all sort of got a bit tired with it, that we were having to battle to get radio play, battle to get any media attention, interviews, whatever. We're still pulling audiences here and in Europe, but it wasn't enough to sustain back in those days. And David had enough pretty much, and he left. Anyway, Ozzy, he pulled out because his new band, called the Blizzard of Oz, wasn't ready. And he'd obviously left it too late, to do a big show like Reading.
Yeah.
And it was the Sunday night show. White Snake were going to be top of the bill. Ozzy was going to be special guest, and then there was the rest of the bill. Now, I think we tried for 3 years to get on Reading. They would not have us. We were too uncool for Reading. And we knew this. It always happened through all our career. We were uncool, that we wouldn't have us on various things. So we weren't surprised. Anyway, I think they'd tried a long list of people to step in at 2 or 3 days' notice to replace Ozzy. And eventually they got down the list to us. I think we were bottom of the list. And they called up and said, will you do it? And Chaz called me, Chaz Chasner. And he said, Reading are after you to replace Ozzy. And he said, will you do it? I said, I'll do it. I said, but I'm not so sure about the rest of them. I called Jim. He says, yeah, I'll do it. I called Don. He says, yes, I'll do it. I called Dave, H as we used to call him.
Right, yeah.
I called H and I said, Reading want us. He went, I'm not doing it. I've said I'm finished, and that's it, I've finished. So I went back to Chaz, I said, 3 are in favour, Dave won't do it. He says, let me talk to Dave. And he could always spill Dave, Chaz. He could always talk Dave round. And the sort of line he gave to Dave was, instead of petering out, as we probably would have done, he said, go out on a bang. Even if you don't go down or you're tired of it, go out on a big show. And we're talking like 50,000 punters out there. And he said, all right. Eventually he talked him round anyway. And without any rehearsals, we hadn't played together for probably 3 or 4 months. And we went down. We had no backstage passes or nothing because it was 2 days' notice. There was no internet then to post us the stuff. We had to take potluck and just get there and arrive.
Did they let you in?
Well, we pulled the car in the public car park. We got our guitars and cases at the boot. Walked through the public car park to the backstage area. We had no passes. Of course, we knew all the security guards. They'd all worked for us.
Sure.
At Wembley and wherever else we'd paid in the past. So we knew them. And they went, what are you lot doing here? Because it weren't announced that we were coming. There was a rumour going round that Ozzy wasn't doing it, but
Right.
they didn't know who was going to replace. And don't forget, these were young metalers, this audience. Wasn't our sort of audience at all. Well, so we thought. And we come to the backstage and they said, oh, come on then. We said, oh, we've come. We're playing tonight. We're replacing Ozzy. And I went, really? Yeah. So we went to our caravan backstage to get ready. And Tommy Vance, who was hosting the show, he used to have the rock show on Radio 1 at the time. And we knew Tommy. He was in our movie, Slade in Flame. And he said, I think you're going to go great. It was the Sunday night. It was the last night of the festival. Nothing had caught fire up to that place, up to that point in time. And he said, I think you're going to do really well. And we said, well, we don't know. It's not our audience at all. He says, oh, you'll be surprised. He says, nothing's really kicked off yet, this festival. And he says, you're going to be all right, don't worry. So we went on, did our usual set. The pit in front of the stage was empty. Where the media go, the radio people and the press people. Totally empty. They were all in the bar backstage.
They'd just gone.
They'd just announced Slade were coming to be the replacement. Nobody had the slightest interest. And we walked on stage and the crowd cheered. The cheers just built. And then I did some chat after the first couple of numbers, which was my thing on stage. I used to chat to the audience and we had some laughs with them. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew. After the first 2 numbers, the cheer was so loud. All from the backstage was in the pit. The pit was full. And they were all like, whoa. And what we hadn't realised was these kids who were out there, these young metalers, had grown up with our songs and bought them, but never seen us live because they were too young. So, they thought we were just the top of the pops.
But you blew it away.
We blew it away.
You blew it away.
By the time we got to the end, the crowd were going berserk.
And this was in the summer, wasn't it? But
it was an August bank holiday.
They wouldn't let you off stage until
Well,
you
we
played.
came off because unless you're top of the bill, you're not allowed an encore in festivals.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
And this is in August.
This is an August bank holiday. And we come off and the promoters were at the side of the stage. Chaz was at the side of the stage, beaming, because he'd talked Dave into it. And they said, get back on, the promoter was saying, which they never do to an act that's not on the top of the bill. And we were, okay. So we went back on. They roared even more when we come back on. And I said, anything you want to hear? That was my usual spiel, when we went back on for encores. I said, what do you want to hear? And they were all shouting, Merry Christmas. I said, I'm not singing Merry Christmas. It's August bank holiday. I said, if you want to hear it, you sing it. So they all started singing it, and then we all joined in with them. And then we did another couple of encores after.
That was almost like a restart for you then, wasn't it?
Because kicked it all off again.
You went on, kicked the whole thing off again,
in
My
the
Oh My,
80s,
in the 80s, and all of that stuff.
But it was all an accident. It was, if Ozzy hadn't cancelled, it would never have happened.
Yeah, but an accident, but kind of meant to be.
Yeah, but we would have finished. We'd have gone. At that point,
did Ozzy ever say, because I never turned up?
He probably did at some point. He probably did.
Probably did. Yeah. I've got a little clip of. Well, it's Tony Blackburn and Noel Edmonds, and they're going to introduce you on Top of the Pops here. So let me just play you this, okay? And this is December, not August bank holiday, by the way. I know they say Christmas starts early now, but August bank holiday.
You're talking 73 now.
So on 73 now.
Okay,
There we go. Let's play this little bit here.
We certainly are. I hope you're all having a lovely Christmas at home. Shall we see if we can hit them at home with one of these streamers? Wait a minute. Oh. Missed again. Never mind. They're fighting back. How dare you?
We leave you, and we wish you a very Merry Christmas from everybody here at Top of the Pops. We leave you with the sound of...
The number one sound, Slade.
Well, it's Slade. Merry
Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.
You know how that goes, don't you? You don't need to hear that again, do you? You don't need to hear that again. The time...
No, play it again because the bank managers will be happy. There's
another sixpence. There's another sixpence for you. It was so exciting then. What was it like to be... As a viewer, this is amazing. This is Hollywood in my front room. This is colourful. This is just the best day ever. The reality of Top of the Pops, is it different?
Yes, it's mind-blowing, especially when you're doing a TV in front of that big an audience. We were probably the hottest band in UK at that time. Mm. We were the biggest selling singles band in the UK during the 70s, which people don't realise. But we were in terms of sales. And, of course, me and Dave particularly, we couldn't go anywhere. We were sort of, certainly in the heyday of the early 70s, we were mobbed wherever we went.
Did you like that attention?
I loved it. So did Dave. You? But Don and Jim, absolutely no way, particularly Jim. hated the attention. Or so he used to say. I think he secretly loved it, but he always would say he hated it.
He likes the royalty.
Yeah, well, he loves the royalties. But me and Dave, we were so instantly recognisable because we were on Top of the Pops virtually every week with one record or another. Yeah. And other TV shows as well, of course. So it was difficult having a private life, absolutely difficult. But we were living in those days, 70, 72, 73, 74, 75. We were living in a bubble. And we was nothing. We didn't know anything outside of the band. We were cosseted, really. We had a big road crew who had been with us right from the start. They were all our mates. We used to be a travelling circus on the road. We had a lot of fun. A lot of fun. But we didn't know the outside world. We didn't really know how big we were, because the only gauge we'd got was selling out the concerts and getting #1 records. We didn't know how it had stretched into the psyche of your general public. We had no clue, because we were living our life.
So you had no privacy?
No, we were living a rock and roll band on the road. We didn't know how far we'd stretched out into the general public. And of course, then we started, we'd already done trips abroad, but we started to go to Germany and Holland and France and all these places, and Scandinavia. We were huge in these places as well, and we couldn't get it. We went to Australia, and we hadn't got a clue. We were booked to do this tour of Australia in racecourses. We were paying 30 to 50,000 people a night. And on the bill was a couple of Aussie bands. An opening for us was Caravan. Do you remember the band Caravan? Lindisfarne, who were a big band in UK, and Status Quo. They were opening for us on this tour.
They were your warm-ups.
They were our warm-ups. And we always talk about it now, us and Quo, about it. It was one of the best tours ever. They'd opened for us on a UK tour, our first UK tour as well. So we knew them real well. And they were sort of building their revitalised time in the boogie woogie jeans period after the 60s psychedelic.
Sure.
And we got on really well. And we were playing, this tour was booked. And we came off the plane after a 28-hour flight. All the bands were on the same plane. And we'd all been drinking the whole way. Of course, it was a bit of a riotous thing. We were all 28 hours of that was a bit chaotic. And we got off the plane. Of course, they were meeting us at the airport. TV, cameras, Lord knows what. And they had a barrel load of Foster's Lager for us to drink on this TV show.
There wouldn't be anything else,
no,
would it?
because it was sponsoring some of the shows and whatever. And of course, we had to sort of drink that as well. And it was hilarious. But what we didn't know, till we got back to the hotel and the promoters come and they were telling us what was going to happen and all that, we'd got 3 singles in the charts at the same time, and the #1 and 2 album. Slade Alive had been #1 for 6 weeks. It had outsold Sgt. Pepper there.
Wow.
And our new album had come out, Slayhead, and that had knocked Slade Alive off #1. It went to #2, and Slayhead was #1. We hadn't got a clue when we got there. We thought, we should have been charging them more money than this. But 3 singles and 2 albums at the top of the chart. And of course, I'd been doing promos in England, voicing promos for them to play out in all the big cities we were doing. We did every big city in Oz, all open-air racecourses. And of course, we'd get on the coach in the morning, take us to the airport. And of course, every radio station was using these jingles. And Crow were going, oh, no, not again.
Not again.
My God.
Not again.
Will you shut him up?
You've loved your life.
Great life.
Yeah.
Great life. I'll tell you what's another thing. Now I'm thinking about 72, 73 as compared to today.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing, but I hear now as the government are doing now, how it's the highest tax rate ever in the history of the country. Now I can put them a bit right on that, because in 1973... top tax rate now is 50%.
Yeah.
In 1973, we were paying 93%, 93 in the pound, 93 pence per pound, That was our tax rate.
So was
in
that
73?
Was that because of the industry you were in, or because of the money that you were earning?
Money we were earning,
Yeah.
of course. And that's why everybody moved out. All the rock stars, film directors,
Yeah.
film actors, all the big earners moved out to Ireland and America.
And of course,
We didn't.
It's easy
People
to
think we went to America as a tax dodge. We didn't at all.
No, 'cause
But it wasn't a dodge. It was legal.
I read about that you stayed here.
We stayed.
Because
And silly us, because we thought our money's going in the coffers. It'll help to get the debt of the country, back on a level scale. Of course it wasn't. It was,
you live and learn.
for want of a better word, weed
You
up
live
the
and
wall,
learn.
And it was strange, and people think, oh, you must have earned a fortune them days. We did earn a fortune, but we also paid a hell of a lot in taxes. So when I see now, this is the highest tax rate there's ever been.
So you've
it's
paid
not
you've
true.
paid your dues.
Oh, absolutely.
You've paid your dues.
Absolutely.
Knowing what you know now, we're nearly coming to an end now, Noddy, but knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently, do you think?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing I wish we'd have done in our career, I mean, as a career in music, I don't wish I'd have done anything different. But what I wish we'd have done as a band would have been able to get bigger hit records in America, particularly a number one in America. I would have loved to do that because we had number one in every other territory. And we never managed it in America. In fact, we didn't get even in the top 20 in America until the 80s. Funnily enough, all our 70s stuff, which was big there in certain areas, but you have to have it across the board in America before you hit the national chart. And we could pull 20,000 seaters. We could fill them in certain areas.
So it's not a regret, though, is it?
It's not a regret, but it would just be nice to have had that, And everybody used to tell us at the time, Elton used to come and see us and he'd say, I can't understand why you're not getting big hits in America. Rod used to say the same to us, Rod Stewart. They couldn't understand it. And yet in the 80s, all the young glam metal bands had been using our
or been citing you as
and
influences.
Quiet Riot,
yeah, you're
covered
right.
Come On Feel the Noise and had a number one American hit with it.
What's the relationship like now with the rest of the band members?
Well, I won't say we see one another and has a great relationship, but that's what happens in bands. We were together for 25 years in a working relationship, and it's like 4 marriages. And I always cite it as 25 years was getting enough for me. It was I felt we were getting stale. We'd been through ups and downs, ins and outs, and we were on another bit of a lull. And as I said earlier, my dad was ill. I've gone through divorce, so my personal life was a bit in upheaval. And I said to the others, I'm going to knock it on the head for a while. You can get another singer in if you want or whatever. But I always said, we weren't getting on great as a band either. And I always cite things that there's always probably 5 reasons a band splits up. Every band, I'm not just picking on Slade, this is every band. And these are 5 of the reasons a band split up. 1 is egos. 2nd is money. The next one is drink and drugs. What's another one? Jealousies. And the last one is musical differences, which is a favourite of everybody.
You've nailed it. It's in every autobiography, isn't it? Somewhere along the way.
And this is what happens with a band that's been around that long. We just pretty much got fed up with one another, really.
Are you friends?
I wouldn't say we're not friends. We don't communicate a lot. If I'm in Wolverhampton, if I'm passing through Wolverhampton, I go and see Dave now. We've all had to build bridges. I built bridges with Dave because, of course, Dave and Dom went out on the road in a Slade Mark II version.
Did you try and stop that?
I didn't. Jim didn't want them to do it, but I didn't because I thought we've been making the money from writing royalties.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of money. So we made more money than they did. And I said, well, I can't stop them having a living, going out and using the Slade name as a matter of earning. And so they did. And but we had a few business hassles along the way, all 4 of us. And but with me and Dave, you see, he can phone me up. He knows if he's got a beef or I've got a beef with him, we can phone one another. There's no problem. We've never fell out. We've had Barneys, but that's the way.
Yeah, but that's
the
mates.
way of the world.
That's
yeah.
mates,
Of course
isn't
it is.
Yeah,
And so whenever I'm in Wolverhampton, I call him up and I say, "Can I come round for a cup of tea or something?" He says, "Yeah, of course."
Can you come and do me drive? Because he used to work for Tarmac, didn't he?
He did.
He
In
did.
the
Come
early
and do me
days,
drive.
he did.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll go round and then we'll probably have a cup of tea and a sandwich and whatever.
Nice.
And he's not changed, Dave. He's just the same. He's an eccentric. He was an eccentric when I met him, and he's still an eccentric now. And he remembers stuff from the past that I can't remember, and vice versa. So we do have a laugh at things, because he'll bring up something and then he'll say, "Don't you remember when we did this, that, and the other?"
Didn't he break his leg and wrapped it in
yes.
broke his leg and wrapped it in tin
in
foil?
Liverpool. He did it at the boxing arena in Liverpool.
I know.
I don't know what it's called now. But
it was Liverpool Stadium.
Yeah.
The stadium.
Yeah, he broke it there. He was dragged off stage. And he broke his leg. And he did the rest of the tour in a wheelchair with his leg in plaster, but with
tin foil.
Covered in tin foil. And he used to be in this wheelchair, and I used to really, scare him.
Yeah.
Because we'd bring him on at the start of the show, the follow-up shows, and the crowd would go in Wally. And I'd take him to the edge of the stage and pretend I was going to tip him into the crowd.
I bet he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it. Noddy, I've got one final thing I want to mention, and it's something that Noel Gallagher said. He said, "No Slade, no Oasis." When you heard that, what did you think?
It's nice, good. I'm glad, and there again, with Oasis, their audience went and looked at our back catalogue and started to buy some of our stuff. It was weird because they were top of the tree at the time, and on their return gig at Main Road in Manchester, their return show, they invited me, Noel invited me, and I sat in a box and watched the show. They were going down a storm, of course. It was the home audience. They were going down great. And they came on, and he sent his missus up to the box where I was sitting to get a picture of me, because when they come on for the encore, they did come on for all the noise. Wow. And he wanted a picture of my reaction. Of course, all the crowd was singing along because they thought it was an Oasis song and were singing along to it,
So were you thinking this is a great moment, or were you thinking royalties again?
No, I was thinking this is a great moment. This is carrying the flag on. And I loved Oasis because I'm a big fan of rock and roll, what I call rock and roll bands.
Rock and roll.
Yeah. There are rock bands and there are rock and roll bands. You look to U2, you look to Queen, you look to bands like that. They are rock bands. We were a rock and roll band. Stones are a rock and roll band. The Beatles were a rock and roll band. And Oasis, to me, come in that category. And they're probably the last of the great rock and roll bands, because I used to love the banter between the two brothers.
Of course.
They were so funny.
Well, I mean, you can look at fights in rock and roll,
Of course.
Everly Brothers,
Kinks.
the Kinks,
Yeah.
all of that. Noddy, it's a pleasure to see you doing well.
I've enjoyed it, yeah.
Thanks very much for all the pleasure that you've given many, many people over the years.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
I knew you'd do that. Thanks, Nod.
Cheers.
Thank you.